There we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this month's meeting of the Nashville Microsoft Azure User Group. As you heard, this meeting is being recorded. It's being recorded so that you can see where to find the videos when they're recorded. Okay. Very brief introduction to the group. The group is everything related to Azure. We're founded in 2013 with four members, and we currently turned 2,700 the last week. So we now have 2,700 and a bit of members in the group. Tell everybody about us anyway. We want to have a really vibrant Azure community. If you're looking for a job or hiring for a job, we have a job board. That's the Azure Group Discussion Forum. Just post a short meeting out there, and hopefully someone will respond to you. Okay, Board of Directors is myself. I'm the founder and president. I'm a solutions architect. Roger Dahlman is co-founder and vice president, and Tim Warner, who is our presenter tonight, is also a vice president in the group. And he'll tell you more about himself, or the slide will tell you more about himself when we get to it. And Jack Hagler has been our VACO Technology Associate Director of Recruiting and our sponsor from the beginning. Sponsorship, we've got, as I said, we've got VACO sponsoring it for our Zoom subscription, and Microsoft pays our meetup dues, so I don't have to pay for that out of my own pocket, which I used to do. Sponsorship intro opportunities exist if you want to have 10 or 15 minutes at the beginning of a meeting to promote your company or product or service. Let Roger Dahlman know. He'll set you up. Okay. Tonight's presentation: build custom GPT-powered chatbots with Microsoft Copilot Studio. And with that, Tim, instead of maybe introducing you, I'll introduce you right now, and you can tell the folks about your background. Okay. Good enough?
Yep. It's the old mute problem. Sure, I'm going to share my screen now.
Okay. Oh, do you need my screen? Oh, well. Sorry.
No problem.
Okay.
Host disabled participant screen sharing. So it must be my role.
Oh, I have to make you.
Yes, please.
Why can't I see you anymore? Hang on.
Right.
Technology. Okay, Tim Warner. I'm going to make you the host. How's that? You can always
Sounds like a plan.
The co-host if you have to. Do you want to change the host to Tim? Yes, you have total control, sir.
Let's see, screen. Okay. Can you confirm, Bill, that you're seeing my browser? It should say Copilot Studio.
Yes, it does.
Okay, thanks. Well, hi, everybody. Glad to be with you again if we've worked together in the past. My name's Tim Warner. I'm here in Nashville, TN, part of this user group, and happy to present tonight on Copilot Studio. I've really been thinking a lot lately about, in my training, to reduce the mean time before impact. So tonight I'm going, as you can see, directly into demo mode. I mean, what's the point of looking at PowerPoint slides? You can go to the Microsoft Learn site and get all of that if you really want to.
Hey, Tim, can I interrupt you for just 1 second?
Please do.
Could you go in and make me co-host so I can watch the waiting room?
Oh, right. Okay.
I gave away the keys.
I can't do that. That's for sure.
Castle.
Well, oh boy, this drag is really a drag, isn't it?
Yeah.
Hate this kind of stuff, logistical.
Hey.
Because unfortunately, I've got the new update here, so I don't know what's going on here. I'll tell you, Bill, this may be it for me. I have to say, this may be.
Reclaim Coast. I'll make you co-host. How's that?
Okay. Yeah, this will be my last prez, I think.
Okay. Now you're going to be co-host. Okay. So I'm host. I'm watching the waiting room, and of course there's people waiting.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead now. All right, so tonight we're talking about Microsoft Copilot Studio, and here we are looking at the portal. Where I want to begin with, believe it or not, is the DNS name. If you look, it's probably small on your screen share unless you're on a huge TV or something. It's copilotstudio.microsoft.com. Let me make sure I'm not muted here. At this point, anything is suspect. It looks
I
like
hear you.
unmuted. Okay, good. All right, so what is this, first of all? You probably know if you've worked with the Power Platform. In fact, here, if I open the Power Platform flyout, we can see Power Apps, Power Automate, Power BI, Power Pages. And what Copilot Studio used to be, you know how Microsoft does their rebranding? In this case, I think it's a really good rebranding, though. Used to be Power Virtual Agents. So basically, the idea of Power Platform is people who are not full-time software developers and coders, people who may be a little technical or not technical at all, but have business acumen and some computer skills. So with Power Apps, you can build data-backed mobile applications. Power Automate, you can stitch together workflows that tie together APIs. Power BI, you can build interactive BI dashboards and this sort of thing. Power Pages is kind of a spin-off of SharePoint. It's a website creation tool. And what used to be Power Virtual Agents, intelligent chatbots, now that we've got OpenAI and the generative pre-trained transformer or GPT large language model, there's that whole backstory. Microsoft, I'm sure, was thinking to themselves, how are we going to take the most advanced large language model, GPT, when we already have Power Virtual Agents, and actually there's also beyond that, the Azure Bot service. If you are a developer, you can work with those SDK libraries and so forth to build intelligent chatbots from a code-first perspective. But keep in mind as we go on through this demo, that the focus here is not the full-time app developer, but what Microsoft calls sometimes the empowered end user, the information worker, this sort of role. So what we have in Copilot Studio is a way to develop intelligent chatbots that now include the ability to boost, as Microsoft calls it, with the GPT large language model, which, if you don't know, is the same LLM that powers ChatGPT, which is one of my two favorite LLMs at the moment. So Microsoft made what I think is a pretty wise choice of keeping Power Virtual Agents. Mostly it's intact, but now we have these integrations. For example, here on the Copilots page, we can see the sparkle here. You might know if you're familiar with GitHub Copilot. Whenever you see that little sparkle, that's an indication of you've got some generative AI capability going on. And here it's basically reminding us that we can tie in, if we have an Azure subscription, with our own custom GPTs and Azure OpenAI service. And that's what I'm demoing right now, as a matter of fact. So that's the idea. And that's why if you're familiar with Power Platform, you're probably familiar with the concept of environments and the Dataverse and AI Builder. All of that is the same. So don't let somebody say, oh, Copilot Studio is separate from Power Platform. I don't think so. No, I don't think so at all. So let's see, where do we want to start? If you've never seen a Power Virtual Agent chatbot, why don't we take a look at an example under the hood? It's a little overwhelming at first. Again, the idea is that we're doing a low-code chatbot build, so you're going to see a whole lot of UI. And I was doing some research this afternoon when I was doing final preparation for this session tonight on whether we could use code to publish here. And I got a no so far. I could be wrong on that. I'm always subject to correction. I'm fine with that. But no, this is really meant to be a GUI tool. That's the audience that we're dealing with. That said, I'm wondering if you like what you see. I'm not here to sell you anything, just I'm kind of a fan. Personally, this is a meaningful tool to me. If you'd indulge me, a personal story for just 2 minutes or maybe a minute and a half tops. I was teaching chatbot development with Power Virtual Agents for O'Reilly a few years ago. Was on vacation with my family in Panama City Beach, and I had to teach this class. So I'm at the kitchen table in our condo teaching. My, at the time, maybe 9-year-old daughter, Zoe, was listening from her bedroom. She's like, chatbots, this sounds exciting. And she actually came out and sat next to me at the table and was participating, just listening. And afterwards, she asked if she could build a bot. And it's really It's been a cool thing personally, which is probably one reason why I'm so passionate about all of this. So you think if a middle school kid can build a functional chatbot that talks about Rain World and Roblox at a great degree of depth, wow, maybe I'm not a developer, but maybe I can add value to our internal organization, to even to our customers, let's say, by publishing one of these chatbots. So as you can see here, there's a testing panel that you can bring back. We can navigate throughout our project down here on the navigation bar. You can bring back the test panel using that toggle in the lower right. Again, it's a little overwhelming at first because you see all of these advertisements for generative AI. It might be better for us to actually dip into the topics of my chatbot. As you can see, my demo bot that I made is a baby name research assistant. Again, I was just thinking of a hello world type example. And there's so much to the subject besides the clicky of how you actually build and deploy the bot. That's actually the easy part. The bigger part is actually blueprinting what you want your conversation flow to look like. And again, most of this is not Gen AI. It's just what was Power Virtual Agents. So if you don't know, I'll give you a quick crash course. You wind up building these topics. For instance, you've got a greeting, how you're going to greet and initially interact with the customer. You've got a goodbye. These are all built in that come when you create a new chatbot. It gives you an option. Do you want to have samples? And the samples are definitely usable. This little brain icon is another indication of generative AI. You're going to see the Gen AI stuff showing up all over the place. For example, if I go over to, let's see, if I go over to system are, again, some of the pre-built little nuggets that come in here. Topics basically are conversation flows. And again, the idea here with Copilot Studio is that you're going to build this intelligent chatbot without using code. Now, the reason why Microsoft calls Power Platform a low-code platform is because eventually you do run into more formula language stuff. There's a language called Power FX that you'll probably need to learn if you want to get into this to any degree of depth. Each of these conversations, these flows, as you can see, you stitched them together graphically using these controls, and you can create and set variables. So in my example, let's see what's happening here. What baby name? Okay, so this looks like the greeting. Describe what the topic does. Okay, but that's not the actual entry point. Again, there's a whole learning curve that I'm intentionally going to have to step over, and I know it's awkward. I want to find the initial entry point, and it's over here on system. The conversation start event is initially going to be every chatbot's start point. So you're going to have, in this case, when the page or wherever you're loading, it's called, the technical term is called a channel. Whatever client you're using to communicate with the chatbot, it's going to start here, the conversation start event. And then notice that I've got a message where I'm taking static, basic, rich text form of, kind of stuff you can do. And you're bringing in, you can layer in variables. I mean, it's relatively basic stuff, but that's the idea. If we look at this text, I say, hello, and then I'm interpolating in the name of the bot. So it's going to involve you learning. It's basically about the level of depth of intermediate, beginning, expert level Excel stuff, as far as the type of programmery stuff that's going on. Power FX, again, is the name of the formula language that you want to get up on. And so we're welcoming the assistant. Microsoft is really big on responsible AI. Another thing that I would encourage you to take a look at, I'll assign it to you for homework, is looking up the Microsoft responsible AI principles. There's 6 pillars. How many? Now, again, full disclosure, the elephant in the room is that the GPT language model itself is very closed source and highly proprietary, which to me is always a chuckle because I think of the responsible AI principles of transparency, accountability, and so on and so forth. Whatever. So the message here, hello, I'm a virtual assistant. And then check it out, little responsible AI sprinkled in. Just so you're aware, I sometimes use AI. You might actually want to have your virtual assistant. Well, it does say virtual assistant. I was going to say, you don't want to have that shady situation where the user's wondering, is this a human? And you kind of want the user to think it's a human. I would advise strongly against that. That's awkward. I've actually asked what turned out to be live humans, are you an AI or a human? Because I wasn't sure, you know what I'm saying? So in this conversation start nugget, it's going to do an introduction, and then how I chose to end this. I thought I had more to this. Am I missing something? Let me see. I thought I did a referral. What I did is when you add a node, what I did is that I knew the actual conversation that does the Gen AI lookup. In other words, that actually will receive the baby name from the user and do a generative AI lookup with GPT to fetch the baby name origin and so forth. In order to get that done, I put that in a separate flow. So how I want this to go, and I don't know what the heck happened here. I wonder if there's an undo. Yeah. Still, it's really odd. Well, we can always test it. Over here, it says, hello, I'm baby name research assistant. You can restart the session by hitting the loop button. What baby name would you like to research? I'll research the name Zoe. Now, again, I don't know if there's a bug or if I messed up this conversation start, but I had wanted it to get wired over to, it looks like it did it at any rate, but I wanted to wire it over to my, oh, where is it? Here it is, right here. I created another flow. The names are really fluid. This is totally my opinion, but the names are really fluid here. So I don't know sometimes if something's called a plugin or a builder. In a sense, it doesn't matter. The bottom line is I want you to see that there's this library of these building blocks that you can think about. Once you've determined, okay, our chatbot is going to take reservations for our restaurant. So we're going to want a flow for making a reservation, modifying one. You know, all the design, in my experience, is the lion's share of the work. This is actually kind of fun, the actual building, and it turns into an iterative development loop, like all development, in which you're making changes and testing them live here in this interface. And two things I want to make sure you know about. Well, three really. One is the collaborative nature of Power Platform. You know, you can comment, you invite your colleagues to review your bot and do comments and that kind of stuff. Another thing that can be a gotcha, especially when you're getting started, is you'll notice, why isn't the save button? Looks like we've got some unmute going on, Bill.
Sorry about that.
The save button is grayed out, as you can see. You have to make sure that your work and your flow, your topic, whatever the name is this week, is valid. So you'll periodically, as part of your development, you'll reflexively start to hit topic checker to see if you've got any errors. And you are required to resolve the errors before you can save your change. It's kind of annoying sometimes, but hey, that's the way it is. So our topic checker is good. Did I not make any changes? No, I haven't actually. We're looking at another flow topic plugin, whatever the heck it's called, that I called Create Generative Answer. Remember how I said that this is really Power Virtual Agents with a boosting of GPT. So you can see, for example, I've got Edit with Copilot. And the idea with that integration is if you're so new at this, you're not even sure which activities to choose on your campus. I guess they're on your canvas. They're called nodes. So you can use natural language to explain your goals, and it will, using generative AI, come back with, it'll actually build out these nodes for you, and you can choose to accept or reject the recommendation, just like you can in ChatGPT or Gemini or Microsoft Copilot or whatever else you're using, okay? That's helpful to actually help you design the flow. There's one of these building block nodes called Create Generative Answers. That I find is the most important one when you want your chatbot to actually go and query a GPT model. And one of the things that I consider to be a chief selling point of Copilot Studio is that just about all the businesses I've worked with so far in the last couple of years doing this stuff, they want to train their own custom GPTs. So the GPT is not only smart on the world's public domain knowledge, but has also been fine-tuned with domain-specific info. I didn't actually show you that step, but when you create your bot, you start with a wizard. I'll actually show you. We didn't make any changes here. So let me bring back the navigation bar. Let me see. Where did I want us to go? Yeah, so let me select my bot. Again, the interface, I personally don't find it maximally intuitive, but it could very well just be me. It could very well just be me. Trying to remember where the page was where you set, oh, there it is, edit Copilot details. It'd be nice to have that be a little bit bigger of a button, but at any rate, yeah, okay. So this is like the overall manifest or metadata where you've got your name. I did a custom icon, but the advanced is where, that's where we can do our monitoring. If you're familiar with application insights, I think you'll really be happy. If you know App Insights, it's dead simple to link your chatbot here into an application insights resource. And therefore, you've got all of this deep metric and log data that you can surface within, say, Azure Log Analytics using Kusto. And then from there, you could go back to Power BI, for example, in terms of your dashboards and reports. Microsoft definitely has emphasized the analytics and the monitoring capability. So it's probably no surprise for you to know that in order to use App Insights, you're going to have an Azure subscription. Now, if you're using Copilot Studio, you're probably a Microsoft shop anyway, at least predominantly. That's my best guess based on my experience. So we were back over in topics, and I was showing you the create generative answer node. Basically, how it works is when it's indicated, in this case, trigger on unknown intent. What that means is that I set this topic, whatever the heck it's called, as a catch-all. One of the techniques that you'll doubtless employ when you're building your chatbot is, how do we handle unhandled exceptions? If a user decides to go in direction Y, and we've taken care of all the other letters of the alphabet except Y, what's going to happen then? So this is our catch-all bucket. And what I'm doing is forcing it into a create generative answers in which the text that was last captured from the user, activity text in this case, is going to be submitted as a prompt to my data sources. So what are the data source options? You can, in addition to what you've already uploaded, you can do two types of fine tuning here in this GUI interface. You can give public websites and or SharePoint sites, which could be enormously useful if your business has a lot of internal knowledge contained in SharePoint. So you've got public websites / SharePoint sites right there. And then we've got our connection to the Azure OpenAI service. So what does that mean? It might be an unpleasant surprise for some customers, actually, who might think, wait a minute, I thought we could build a custom intelligent chatbot. And you can. I mean, besides giving the websites, the other thing you can do when you're setting up the properties of your chatbot is that you can, let's see, there's websites. You can actually upload files. That was something I wanted to show you also. It's just another dialog box. Unfortunately, in my practice using Copilot Studio, the file upload is really limited. It's like 3 megabytes per file, which is not workable if you're in PDF. Microsoft really wants you to do plain text uploads. They don't have to be JSON or JSON lines format, but hopefully it makes sense. Shredding plain text is a lot less effort generally than shredding even an OCR capable PDF. But yeah, the limits are really unreasonable on that, in my opinion, right now. So you can set up a connection to a custom GPT that you've deployed within your Azure subscription. Again, it's an option. It's not something you have to do. That's something that I set up in this case. And so again, something else that you want to think about in your chatbot design, in your flow, are things like conditions. So in this case, the data source lookup takes place. And then what is my condition? If the answer is not blank, then end the current topic. Where's the answer? Did I decide that? Did I designate that somewhere? But you can, hopefully the idea here is for you to see the general idea. You're working through a lot of these dialogues and looking up, where do I get this value and that sort of property, basically learning curve stuff. But one of the unfortunate jokes, tell me if you chuckle on this, I've found is that you meet your learning curve and then Microsoft changes it and you have to learn it all over again. So you're always learning no matter what. Let's see here. There were some other, if I go back to topics, another entry point that I discovered with Copilot Studio with generative AI and GPT is here when you're actually designing the topics that will form the bones of your chatbot. So you can see up here when we go to create, we can go topic, and we can either start with a blank canvas or we can go directly into GPT mode. Now, my understanding is that all of this integration stuff is you're communicating with Copilot Studio's internal generative AI. So that's included in your monthly, however they're charging it. Is it per bot per month or whatever? I noticed something on the pricing just in passing. I guess I should look at that more closely. Somebody's got to pay for it. But anyway, yeah, so this is just an example of where the GPT, the cost is going to be eaten by Microsoft because they're giving you this ability to prompt your way into an example. So let's actually, just speaking of that, let's look at one of these examples. Let someone order a pizza, choosing from common pizza types and how many they want to order. Okay, so I'll call this pizza order. And let's do create. You'll find there's an emphasis of examples and education here as well, because that's part of the strategy with Copilot Studio specifically and the Power Platform in general, because the audience is not the propeller head, of which I'm happy to be a member, by the way. It's the empowered end user. So therefore, the more, I'm guessing, presumably the more help and all this. Of course, being a teacher, I'm all about that anyway. So it looks like this popped us into a new flow. Okay, let's just quickly inspect the flow. So the trigger is something called dynamic chaining. See the brain? That is where you're letting Copilot decide what the intent is. What does that mean? I guess it bears just a little bit more explanation. So I'm bringing out my drawing tool here, which is Zoom It, sysinternal Zoom It. Okay, so what's dynamic chaining? Before GPT, when this product was just Power Virtual Agents, you could create an intelligent chatbot, but nowhere near as intelligent as with GPT. Previously, you really did have to script out most of these conversations. So you had to think about trigger words and phrases, and you'd literally come up with a list of candidate phrases. And the service was smart enough to do fuzzy matches, like if somebody's talking about some, you know what I'm saying, words that aren't exactly in your list, it could work around that, but nothing like GPT. So I think the idea of dynamic chaining is the AI is actually seeing, okay, based on what the user just put in as input, what is their intent? And that intent is really critical because that's what you're using as your trigger, So there's a lot more to that discussion, but it's beyond our scope and time. Bottom line is when we run this particular flow pizza order, it's going to ask us what type of pizza would you like to order? And then you can choose what kind of data you're collecting, including these different cards. So for instance, a bot I did a couple of years ago for a customer was like a variant of a weather lookup bot. And when it came back with the weather forecast, like you would see in any self-respecting mobile app nowadays, the little card, right, with a live sun and all, that kind of stuff. Nothing really whizzy, but, you've got quite a few built-in widgets, for lack of a better term. So identify takes you into the concept of entities and potentially the dataverse. Basically, in Power Platform, the Dataverse is a cloud-based SQL database or SQL-like database where you can build out a relational data model for your applications. Again, using a simplified interface with a low-code interface kind of deal. And in that Dataverse, you can classify keywords and information that you may want to take action on. Basically stuff that you would set a variable on in your source code if you're making an application that way. So the Dataverse includes a whole bunch of standard entity types, but you can create your own, including enumerations or closed lists, or you can make fuzzier entities, like using regular expressions to capture a range of input from the user. You might want to capture the customer's name, their ID number, anything you need, therefore, to do further work. And, you can scope those variables locally to just the conversation or the current dialogue, or you could make them global. Again, a lot of the same garden variety programming paradigms are at play here. It's just that the focus is different. It's transformed, simplified, whatever. In this case, we're presenting the user a fixed or closed list, and we're going to save their response as in a variable. Then we're going to also, it looks like, gather the number of pies that they want and grab that. And then this one's just ending with a whimper by giving us an echo, basically, if you've ordered this much. Then it would be up to us. Now, in terms of what you can do, some possibilities. Topic management is really good for wiring among your little conversations. Actions is where a lot of potential AI stuff can come in as well. For example, you might have encapsulated, like, let's say you ask, your bot asks, would you like to receive our newsletter? And they say yes. You can encapsulate all of that logic of creating that subscription and sending out the first message in Power Automate, using a low-code experience to stitch APIs together. So the idea here is that you can bring in those Microsoft Flow. Again, the product naming is just so funny. Is it Power Automate, or is it Microsoft Flow, or is it Azure Logic Apps, or is it ... Somebody earns a great living thinking up renames. Was there one other thing I wanted to mention about those things? Topic management, variable, I think that was it. Advanced, let's see, generative answers. So if you wondered specifically where that special node lives, at least as of today, April 17th, 2024, it lives here in your node browser under advanced generative answers. Well, okay, well, given that, what's next? We talked a bit about design. We talked a bit about development and testing and validating and saving your bot. What about actually publishing it? Well, we can do that. Go over to publish and you hit publish. That's literally it. What's happening? Well, your Copilot is being put out, promoted out onto the public internet. Now, that's one of the things, obviously, that we want to be concerned about. And notice here in this dialog, let's take a look here. Let's scroll down. We've got our channels. That's going to be our clients. We've got our analytics, but we want to look at authentication because that's actually a bit of a sticky wicket, actually, is the subject of authentication. By the way, I figure I'll go for another 10 minutes max and then see if anybody has questions. I'm give you candid feedback for sure. But yeah, just know that you can do anonymous auth, which I would not recommend except for like a quick test with the demo website like I'm doing right now tonight. But for business, you're going to want to lock down the auth. It's somewhere in your bot settings. Basically, what were the options? There is public or anonymous read. There's the native Teams, which is the Entra-based authentication. There's a few different auth options. That would be an administrative decision, but something to consider. The channels, let's definitely take a look at that. As you can see, let me tighten up the UI a little bit. There's quite a few built-in channel integrations here. The one that you can always use really quickly is the custom website. When you click that, it'll open up your bot, which again, I just want to state this for the record. When you click publish, Microsoft takes your application and puts it out on the internet. And based on your authentication, it's either going to be open like mine is, or it's going to prompt for auth. And if you've got permission to interact with the bot, you can. You should note that Power Platform historically is intended not for customer or public facing scenarios, but for internal scenarios. That's important. So I don't think Power Virtual Agents were originally designed with the customer or the public designed at all. There are ways that you can make your chatbot publicly available. Number one, turn on anonymous auth, but there's licensing worries that I would have if I were going to do that in production that I would want to make sure to straighten out before making your chatbot really public. Again, Power Platform's weird in that regard, where it's fine if you're internal, but trying to share with externals, it's gotten better, but it's whatever. What name do you want to research? Didn't I try Zoe before? How about I try Amelia? I don't know why I'm choosing these names, but And again, behind the scenes, I notice it takes a little while. That's something else, ways to improve the lookup time of your bot. You want to think about things like region, not that you have that much choice in the Power Platform about that. I don't remember exactly how my OpenAI service GPT was set up, actually. I mean, maybe it's using the internal knowledge. What I did, let me try to show you that dialogue I mentioned earlier, where when you develop your bot, you can upload additional documents and all that kind of stuff. Let me see. Copilot details, is it under there? That's where we were before. Nope, that's not where it is. Language understanding, security skills, channels, generative AI. I think it's under, yeah, here it is. Okay. So in your chatbot project, it was confusing as heck to me at first, because on the Copilots page are all of the Copilots that either you created or you've been given access to. But then when you select a Copilot, the left navigation then becomes specific to just your project, which for me is a UX party foul, because I thought that was supposed to be the global navigation over there. Nobody asked. So anyway, under settings, generative AI, as I was saying before, the way that you can make your GPT smart without going through Azure OpenAI service is to submit your public websites and SharePoint sources here, and then you can upload your documents. Now, the gotcha with uploading knowledge to your GPT in Microsoft Copilot Studio is the same gotcha that I have if you're using ChatGPT Plus, Team, or Enterprise. I'm really concerned about it, to be honest. And that is the fact that when you fine tune or create a custom GPT, users are able to spill those file contents by asking the chatbot. And I've tested that and it works. And it's not cool, because I know that I'm going to run into a client that doesn't want their the file contents to be visible. You probably don't. I don't in general. So I'm really concerned about this. I'm sure it will be addressed and fixed or transformed, whatever sugar you want to add to the term. But yeah, it bothers me. But as you can see, 3 megs a file. I mean, that's a lot of data for a text or a JSON file, but for a PDF or even a big Excel or Word file, PowerPoint file, you're going to go way above 3 megs. So I had to ultra compress this PDF, this baby names PDF that I have. I had to ultra compress that thing. Another thing that may not be intuitively obvious with these Copilot Studio things is that you're like you are with whenever you deal with GPT, frankly, and that includes GitHub Copilot. You're subject to the content moderation API of the vendor. In this case, you can have some flexibility in terms of the strength of that content moderation. The default is high, in which the Copilot generates fewer answers, but they're more relevant. You know what this is more of a filter of, more than anything else, is the temperature property of GPT, where high is going to actually give you a lower temperature, where the GPT is being stricter, more methodical, and therefore more terse in its completion, and consequently less creative and less randomized, more deterministic. Whereas if we go to medium or low, you're going to get closer and closer to hallucination territory, where you've just overcorrected. I think of turning up a stereo, like my old favorite stereos in the late 70s and 80s, too high to the point where you get fuzz and distortion. You know you've gone too far at that point. That's hallucination as I see it, especially when you're controlling the temperature. So there's our temperature control, such as it is. Other than that, I would encourage you as homework, as you're developing your bot, to watch the interface, because there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to potentially take advantage of. And because it's laid out in, I think, a pretty education-friendly way, it gets the Tim Warner stamp of approval, if such a thing were ever to exist. As far as, I mean, not bad. I mean, we can see right here, boost coverage. If we want to use generative answers, it can take us right to the appropriate spot. If we're not sure where to begin with Azure OpenAI, we know we probably want to link it with Copilot Studio, but we don't know how. We've got a one click to get out there and learn. So definitely big ups to Microsoft on that. I wanted to say one final thing about channels. And this is, I think, quite exciting. Again, assuming that your chatbot's going to be internally facing rather than customer or public facing. The fact that, fingers crossed, we're going to be able to take these custom chatbots that we make here and surface them across all of your Microsoft 365 applications. For example, if I open up Excel real quick, I have a Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365 license. So I'm just going to quickly open a sample file if I can find one. Because one of the integrations, I don't think we're there quite yet, but this is just a sample data set that I was working with. Look here on the ribbon, Copilot. So the idea is we'll be able to surface using, I think this is the way, I don't know for sure, but I think the channel integration here is going to allow you, for instance, as in my work as a professional author, I could see myself creating a custom Copilot that knows all of the Microsoft fictional company names and fictional people names, that knows all of the Azure docs, publicly available, maybe even private, because you've got that data security assurance when you're using Copilot with M365. And then surfacing that, for instance, in Word, or making a financial wizard bot and loading it into your pane here in your application. Very candidly, because as you know, I'm pretty darn unfiltered. I've found Copilot and Microsoft 365 to be so bad, I have to literally hold myself back from canceling my subscription. The only reason I'm paying for a subscription is for this. In my community work, I want to be able to demonstrate Copilot in these applications. And of course, you're not going to be able to do that without a sub. Now, that said, I do hold a lot of hope and positive regard that we'll see this get better and better, just like we're seeing the court cases. Hopefully we'll get fewer and fewer as we're straightening out regulations and laws with generative AI and intellectual property, yada, yada. Hey, Bill, is there any questions in the chat that I might not have seen?
Yeah, we've got a couple of questions in the chat, okay?
Okay. Would you mind reciting them?
Okay, I'll try.
Okay. Oh yeah, your voice. Hold on. I mean, I can try to grab the
Sorry.
chat.
Yeah, it's just a couple of chat blocks of, comment/chats,
Oh, right.
if you can look at them.
Ah. Okay. Yeah, I'm scanning through the questions. Let's see. YouTube. Yeah, about the linkage, like I said, this particular session, I decided to completely omit PowerPoint. So I don't have a slide deck. I don't think we need one. I sometimes, honestly, will put up a gist or something. I would say if you're looking for more guidance on this subject specifically, I would hit Microsoft Learn, really. Learn.microsoft.com/training. There, I know that there's free training there, self-guided, self-directed, computer-based labs on Copilot Studio. There was a question on generative AI. Let me bring the chat panel back. Let me see. Oh, other O'Reilly classes. I don't know what other people are presenting. I'm going to be teaching this subject for O'Reilly sometime in the next coming weeks. Not too many weeks, I don't think. I teach GitHub Copilot, teach ChatGPT and blah, 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 blah. And I'm sure a lot of other instructors are on it as well. I mean, it's a gold rush, let's face it. Let's see here. These cool comments. Does the Copilot Studio capacity to, okay, good. Okay, I'm seeing a question that's asking, does Copilot Studio have multimodal capabilities? To my knowledge, the answer to that is no. Now, if you're wondering what in the world does multimodal capabilities mean? It means this. You know how, for example, in my chatbot here, it's going to take the baby name given by the user and submit it as a prompt to a GPT. But I haven't seen any provision for file upload. It's becoming more and more standard, which is where the question is coming from, I think. That, for example, ChatGPT Plus, Gemini, I don't think is doing file uploads. It'll do image uploads. Claude helped me big time today on a project with a file upload. We're not there yet here. I'm trying to think offhand. Over at Azure OpenAI service, you'll have API access to your GPTs. So, but even there, that's actually a good question. I don't know if you can do file uploads. I don't think so yet with Azure OpenAI. That's generally been the pattern. And if you don't know the history, basically OpenAI has been at the vanguard. They're always leading the pack here. And Microsoft, because they're basically 50-50 partners with OpenAI, are monetizing GPT as well. And so it's doubtless that we will probably almost always see a lag between what OpenAI is doing with GPT here, and then, for instance, what Microsoft is doing with GPT in Azure OpenAI service. And then here, as you saw, it links back to Azure OpenAI service. So it sounds like you're going to be in Azure OpenAI service, which is really another whole discussion, honestly. The Cliff's notes on that, just FYI, if you might find this interesting. If you do a Google search for something like Azure OpenAI service docs, you'll wind up at learn.microsoft.com in the Azure OpenAI service docs. And what I always tell people to do is look for the what is, and you'll find it on the landing page here. It's always intentionally placed, hopefully where your eye will hit it first. What is Azure OpenAI? And notice here in the table of contents, right underneath responsible AI, how do I get access? The bottom line is, as of today, April 17th, 2024, Microsoft is getting into the service, and it's purely capacity. It's purely a question of demand being higher than capacity. Because you think about it, in the Azure cloud, Microsoft is hosting all of their M365 infrastructure, all of their Azure infrastructure, who knows how much internal infrastructure, plus all of OpenAI's infrastructure for ChatGPT, plus infrastructure for big name vendors going around the world. So, wow, that's a lot of money, a lot of data centers. Makes my brain hurt a little bit. So yeah, you're going to run into that. And you'll also run, unfortunately, and in all likelihood, once you are in your Azure subscription and you're ready to create your OpenAI service, you'll probably run into an issue there because, again, at last check, it may or may not be an issue for you, but at last check, you have to get on another waiting list in order to get greenlit to use GPT-4, which is the latest version of the generative pre-trained transformer LLM. You know, again, it's basically going to Disneyland and waiting, assuming that you're going to wait in a line before you get to the good stuff. Yeah, I'm seeing further in the chat, workarounds to uploading files if your generative AI doesn't support that is just copying and pasting the plain text. Sure. I mean, at base, all of these LLMs are going to work with text input and text output. It gets a lot more interesting with multimodal generative AI, where you can not only get back source code, text, images, audio, video, etc., full Office documents, PDFs. I've had GPT create PowerPoints and Word documents and Excel files and PDF files and JSON and CSV. Amazing. So it's multimodal on the output, but also increasingly multimodal on the input as well, which we've already discussed a few times. So if you want to stay in touch, probably your best bet is to go to LinkedIn and just look for my name. Tim Warner Pluralsight would probably work. Also, I'm very active at GitHub. If you go to github.com/Timothy Warner, I've got quite a few public repos in there. All of my O'Reilly training, for example, is in GitHub. And there's quite a bit of generative AI stuff in there that you're free to take, you're free to contribute to as far as that goes. Pull requests, always gratefully appreciated. Other questions from anybody? Bill, have you captured questions in other formats, or is that it?
I think we do capture the chat automatically. I'll make sure that when I send you the video to record, I'll send you the chat as well.
Okay, cool. Yeah, well, I hope you all got something out of this. I didn't expect to have a huge response from people because again, sample size of one, but I haven't seen a huge surge of uptake on this yet.
Mhm.
I mean, let's face it, aren't we all pretty shell shocked? Because it's like these 1-2 punches with different Gen AI stuff coming. And, you know, for me,
Okay, any more questions, folks?
I keep getting muted. I think I've been yapping for a
Oh,
long time into the void, Bill.
no,
Oh, well,
I heard you.
all good.
We heard you.
All right. Well, that's all I got. Thanks,
Okay.
everybody.
Okay, Tim. Well, thanks a lot. Another great presentation in the can, and we'll make sure that it gets published. Okay. Take care, everyone. See you next month.